What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Redonkulous Gaming. We are going to jump into yet another Disc Priest video. This time we will be going with the Venthyr Covenant, and the Venthyr Covenant is a fun one for Disc. Let's go ahead and jump into it. First of all, if you're not familiar with the Covenant ability that's granted to you regardless of what class you join with the Venthyr, that ability is Door of Shadows. Door of Shadows is on a 1.5-minute cooldown, and it's going to allow you to, once every 1.5 minutes, teleport from one location to another. Pretty simple. It's going to take a brief cast time. It's no longer instant like it was in the good old days of Alpha. Kind of hoping they bring that back. I think a lot of people are complaining because they felt like it was a little too overpowered, but to those people I say, look at Soul Shape. You're teleporting instantly once every 4 seconds or so, and bring it back, Blizz. Just bring it back. But if you've seen my videos before, that's not why you're watching this one. You want to learn a little bit about mind games and how that's interacting with the Disc Priest mind games, of course, being the class ability granted to you by joining the Venthyr Covenant. And the way in which I go about kind of stack ranking the Covenant abilities, as well as just kind of determining where I ultimately want to put my Disc Priest when Shadowlands launches, is I take a look at really 3 sets of criteria. The first of which is a rather simple question, but one that's going to vary from person to person, so I'll be answering it more for me. And that question is it fun? Is Mind Games a fun ability? Is it something that I enjoyed playing with, or is it something that I felt was rather boring, or maybe just did not define the class in the way that I normally would have liked? So that's the first one, Mind Games. Is it fun? Question 1. Question 2, is it strong? Is it something that I feel as though really helps with that class identity and becomes something that's foundational to the way I play Disc Priest? And does it perform well enough for me to feel ultimately happy with its throughput and everything that it brings? So, relatively straightforward question. Is Mind Games strong? We'll get to that here shortly. And then lastly, will Mind Games enable me to do all types of PvE content? Because that's what I enjoy in World of Warcraft, is playing PvE content. And in Shadowlands, I'm going to be spending a bulk of my time doing Mythic Plus, Torghast, and raiding. And I want to make sure that my Disc Priest can do all of the above relatively seamlessly. Or is it something that, maybe has a place that's a little bit more niche? Maybe it's something that only is strong in raid. And that's stuff that we'll talk about as well. If you didn't see the previous video as well, I'd like to also call out, and try not to look at it, guys. Try not to look at it. But I am having crazy lure errors within my LVUI build. I tried to not let it bother me, but it kept popping up, and I kept exiting out of it while I was playing it because it was driving me nuts. Hopefully it doesn't do that to you, but I tried to re-record these videos without it, and I thought I fixed it, and I kept getting the same lure errors, and I just said, you know what, screw it. We're going to make these videos because beta is broken. That doesn't mean that we can't at least learn about the class, right? And about these Covenant abilities. So apologies, because it's going to keep popping up over my details, and I like to have my details up where it kind of shows my spells so you guys can see what I'm casting, and unfortunately it does cover that from time to time. So I really apologize, and hopefully it doesn't annoy you as much as it annoyed me, although again, now that I called it out, it's going to annoy the crap out of you. So apologies, guys. Let's jump into it. So, first question, is Mind Games fun? And first of all, what the heck is Mind Games? So, Mind Games is actually a really unique and different ability. So what it is, just kind of at its core, is it's a pretty strong damage cast that does interact with your atonement healing. So, you're going to want to have atonements up across the board. You're going to want to get Mind Games off, and it's going to do, it's a spell that hits for 300% of your spell power as shadow damage. And like I said, that is actually a really nice throughput to your healing. And again, it's something that becomes relatively rotational because it's only on a 45-second cooldown. So this is very much going to become a regular part of your rotation for healing your party. So that's, at its core, is a very good thing. Now, the other neat thing that this does is, for the next 5 seconds, it's going to put a debuff on the target and it's only single target, so that's its limitation, is that it's only single target. But that single target, any damaging abilities that they cast are actually going to heal their target, and any healing abilities that they cast are going to damage their target. So when they think they're healing a friendly or themselves, they'll actually damage themselves or a friendly. And if they think they're damaging you, they will actually heal you. And that's actually a pretty darn cool little interaction with the mobs out there. I actually used Mind Games on Muzala on when I knew that someone was going to take a hit from one of his little fisticuffs that he does, and it ended up healing that person instead of killing them. So I thought it was pretty cool to see that it actually worked on a boss. I hope it stays that way, because it would be really nice if that debuff applied to bosses throughout the duration of Shadowlands. I don't know that it will, because it was crazy powerful. This person was about to die, and they were healed to full instantly just from standing in dumb. So again, I hope it stays that way, because it adds a extra layer of complexity to Mind Games, beyond it just being a really good throughput ability that will heal all of your atonement targets at once. So the way that I went about utilizing Mind Games is you're able to stand pretty far back. It's got a 40-yard range, so it's not anything like Necrolords where you have to be all up in everybody's business and kind of duck and weave in and out. You're going to stand at a distance, and you're going to want to make sure you've got atonement on just about all the targets that need it. You're going to get Mind Games off. You're going to get the passive healing for the next 5 seconds on the primary target that has Mind Games on it. But then you're free to go ahead and hit your Mind Blast, your Penance. You're free to get your Shadow Fiend up. You can go around and just use that time to get shields on everybody, whatever you want to do. But it gives you a 5-second reprieve, especially if it's a boss fight where you really don't have to worry about healing the party, because the boss is going to do that, or the target's going to do that for you. So it just kind of gives you a little extra wiggle room there, and it actually was a lot of fun. And that answers my first question: is this a fun ability? Hell yeah, it's a fun ability. I have no idea how this is going to work in PvP. I wonder if they're going to have to nerf it for the sake of PvP. That's the only thing that makes me worried about committing to Venthyr right now in the current state of beta, because I can see a lot of PvPers complaining about this ability, mainly because of the reverse damage and healing. And if you're not necessarily tracking Mind Games, or if you're rolling with a different covenant, or you don't know what the heck it does, and you get this debuff on you, you could be wailing on somebody and then heal them to full in PvP. And so hopefully the only thing that does, or that will do to Mind Games, is potentially nerf the actual dot effect, and maybe it'll just be the next attack. I don't know, but I really hope Blizzard doesn't mess with this one too much, because in PvE it actually works really, really well with the 5-second debuff and the ability to heal your party and give you that, just kind of that 5 seconds to just kind of gather whatever your next move needs to be. Or if you've already kind of collected your thoughts and you know what you need to do, you use that time to catch up if maybe you potentially fell behind. And as I said, because Mind Games is on a 45-second cooldown, it's actually something that becomes relatively rotational, and something that you're using pretty liberally throughout the dungeon, the raid, the whatever the heck you're doing, fill in the blank. Now, as far as overall strength of this ability, I already mentioned I'm a little nervous Blizzard's going to nerf this thing, and anytime that you're nervous about Blizzard nerfing something, it means it's generally in a pretty good place in terms of strength. Where the only area that you can kind of complain and say, okay, this isn't as good in X scenario, would potentially be dungeon type formats where you aren't necessarily doing your best to get atonements up. Maybe you've fallen behind a little bit and you're just kind of using Mind Games as no shit button. Don't do that. There's going to be setup for Mind Games. You need to get some atonements up. You need to take advantage of that initial damage that's done, so that you can, and you can also boost it too with Schism. So there's a number of things that you can do here to kind of enhance Mind Games and ultimately make it work more in your favor. So work on setting it up, and despite the fact that it is on a 45-second cooldown, take advantage of the mechanics of Mind Games and the fact that it does give you a 5-second window right after you initially cast it, where it's going to be healing your targets instead of damaging them. So keep all that in mind. It does change, obviously, the way in which you play Disc Priest, because even though you need to set up mind games, you have to because you're setting up mind games a little bit more. You're setting up everything else a little bit less, and that sounds a little weird. And hopefully, it's something that you're just kind of watching and seeing. But I don't have full atonements out really at all, and for the most part in dungeons, not everyone's taking damage, so that's pretty normal. But I'm able to cast Shadow Word Death. I'm able to get my Schism off a little bit more liberally. I'm able to get Mind Blast out there. I'm able to AoE a little bit on some of the trash packs, and it's all because Mind Games is in my toolkit. And I know that if I run into a scenario where I do fall behind a little bit, I have those 5 seconds after I cast Mind Games where I don't necessarily have to worry about burst damage going out, especially if it's against a boss or something like that. Now, the last criteria that I focus on, is this going to be something that is going to allow me to enjoy PvE at its finest in all forms? I would say yes, because where this has its limitations is certainly in dungeons, and therefore probably Torghast, because you're dealing with a party up to 5. I already mentioned this only affects a single target, but it's on a 45-second cooldown, but it does interact with your atonement, and because it interacts with your atonement, the fact that it's single target doesn't matter, and the fact that you can enhance it with Schism, the fact that you can do different things to tee it up, it becomes incredibly strong in Raid, where you get your Power Word Radiance off and you extend the Atonement, and then you get your next Power Word Radiance off, you hit Mind Games, and then the tank's getting a free heal because they're getting whomped on by the boss, and suddenly for the next 5 seconds they're getting healed up, and the rest of your party is getting healed up through the Atonement. So it's pretty darn strong overall, and like I said, the fact that you can do just about any type of content as long as you're good at monitoring your Atonement, and as long as you're making sure that you've set up Mind Games properly to get the most effectiveness from it, you're in a pretty good spot to do just about everything. Now, what I will say about Mind Games is that it's less punishing too if you don't set it up properly, because you do have that 5-second window where if you've got nothing else and you're out of options and all you have is Mind Games left, and you go ahead and you get that cast off and it heals your tank, and the rest of the party, maybe you have 1 or 2 people go down, but you're able to survive a wipe because of Mind Games, that's not a bad spot to be in when you're picking Covenant ability either. So overall, while this thing is not intended to be a throughput in terms of just pure healing from the get-go, there's not like burst healing at the beginning like there is, in with Boon of Ascendance, or even the Necrolord ability on Holy Nova. That initial burst healing only comes if you have Atonement up, and if you don't have Atonement up, then it's going to fall on its face a little bit. So just like everything else with Disc, as long as you set it up properly, you're going to get a lot out of this ability, and even if you don't set it up properly, you're at least going to be able to heal for the next 5 seconds the primary target that's being attacked by the mob in which you've got Mind Games up on. So not the worst place to be in. I actually think it plays really well in terms of the way that you need to play Disc with all the setup and everything that is required, but overall it's not anything that I would shy away from, and it's actually something that I would probably run towards right now if I'm thinking just Disc Priest and only Disc Priest. But I will say that the Shadow Priest does benefit from Mind Games tremendously as well, so if you main Disc and off Shadow, it's something to take a cold hard look at, just because of everything that it brings to you from a class-wide perspective, and the ability to solo maybe as Shadow as well. But again, as always, would love to know your thoughts about this, if this is something that you've been flirting with, reading about, or trying to watch videos on. I'd love your opinion. Again, this is all without taking into context soulbinds or conduits. We're in the mode of Blizzard tweaking everything right now. This video could be irrelevant tomorrow. Doesn't matter, at least for the sake of all the testing that I've done, because I don't know how much tweaking they can do to this thing, other than removing maybe that 5-second window and turning it into the next heal or the next damaging ability or whatever it is, because this is actually in a really, really good spot right now. Just like I would say Necrolords and Boon of Ascendance, they're both in really good spots. I think they've done a pretty darn good job with the Priest Covenant abilities overall.